for way too long. Please welcome Jane Fonda.
The following excerpts are from And the Rat Laughed, a novel by acclaimed Israeli writer Nava Semmel, a child of Holocaust survivors. The novel, translated by Miriam Schlesinger, begins in 1999 in Tel Aviv, with a survivor trying to answer her granddaughter's questions for a school project about her Holocaust experience. As a 5-year-old girl, she'd been hidden from the Nazis on a farm in Poland, in a pit, with only a rat for company. In the pit, she was sexually abused by Stefan, the son of a Polish farmer. Her granddaughter tells the legend of Girl and Rat to her teacher. And in 2009, those who have heard it through her classmates set up an internet website with poems which spread the memory mythically around the world. The novel takes place in the past, present, and future. From 1943 to 2099, when an anthropologist discovers the diary of Father Stanislaw documenting his rescue of the little girl in the pit. Jumping back and forth in time, the novel focuses on memory being transferred via the chain of generations. From the novel, A Day in Tel Aviv, 1999. How to tell the story. Things that had been locked inside began showing through lately. But maybe there's no need to tell her story at all. The old woman keeps trying to stick to her silence. For so many years, she's kept the story inside her, and now the question refuses to be muted any longer. It rises out of its grave, egging her on, intrusive. How should the story be told? Maybe it's been told already. Leaking through in moments of distraction, forcing its way to the surface whenever she loosened her grip. And since the thought of that story being jostled about unattended and vulnerable without her is too unsettling, it's as if she has no choice but to assume the role of storyteller. But she doesn't know how. And just as she has repressed the story, so too does she now repress the very question. Because if she were to give it a voice, the story would burst through without her being able to contain it, and its severed limbs would scatter in all directions, unfamiliar even to her. Insofar as it depends on her, she's not going to tell the full story. I was their little girl, fathers and mothers. I loved them. That could be the beginning. No, that would put an end to the story before it even began. I was a little girl. I did not choose to be born. I suppose I must have been happy. Not that the question ever arose, of course. Children are not in the habit of wondering about their own happiness. What would you like to know? What good will it do? Why now? The old woman's barrage of questions tries to ward off the inevitable, but her granddaughter won't let up. She insists on getting some answers. The old woman is having trouble finding a sensible place to begin, one that won't jeopardize the rest of it. And yet she's the only one who can tell it. It's not, if not all of it, most of it, at least some parts of it. A strange sense of urgency overtakes her. Maybe it's old age. She can't afford to let the story disappear as if it never happened. I had a mother. I had a father. Won't you make do with that? I loved and lost. That's the end. And the beginning, too. They lowered her into a pit under the ground. The stranger, the one who she would come to call the farmer's wife, dragged her down the ladder and said, "This is where you stay." The little girl who once was thought that only the worst creatures in the world lived under the ground, and the worst of all were the rats. Stefan, the farmer's wife, his mother, makes do with calling after him. Soon he'll be married and have children, and there'll be an heir to the farm and all that goes with it. Oh, what's that between your legs? Don't you dare cry, you scum. Jewish scum. Just you wait, I'll show you. Soaked in her own urine, in her own vomit, in her own excrement, hemorrhaging herself, the tears she learned to stifle because, unlike the other bodily discharges, tears can be a giveaway. Her very life depends on her complete control over her body. Quite an insight for a 5-year-old. To this day, she never sneezes or coughs. The following day, Tel Aviv, late 1999. I don't have a story, Mary. I'm really sorry. I mean, you can flunk me. I know your intentions are good. And besides, I'm the one that put my hand up in class and said that she'd been there, and I admit it. Maybe I was kind of trying to make an impression, and you figured there had to be a story there. I didn't find it. I swear to you, I really tried. I deserve a passing grade for doing that much, don't I? I spent the whole afternoon with her till evening. Look, here's the notebook. You can see for yourself. And I was all prepared to take down her story, just like you said, and maybe, much as I hate to say this because you're my teacher, maybe there just simply is no story. She won't even let me call her a Holocaust survivor. She says survivors are just the ones who've had some miracle happen to them, and my grandmother doesn't believe in stuff like that. Now I don't know what to call her. A little Holocaust. That's what she said. I swear those were her words, even though for some reason I don't really know why. I didn't actually write them down. I told her, but you did survive. You stayed alive. I even stressed the word alive like you told me to. But she answered right away that it wasn't a miracle, though I suspected she really did expect a miracle back then. And I tried, I swear to you, I tried to get her to start from the beginning so I could get it all down. And I did just what you told me to, because even though you're our history teacher, I know you studied psychology too. But she just kept mixing things up and getting all confused. And just when I thought she was finally getting on with it, she would stop and clam up, and then she'd try again, and again everything got stuck, and I couldn't understand where the bug was. Oh, but I started losing patience. But still, I kept restraining myself because it isn't easy for them to go back. We have to be sensitive and responsible in how we draw them out. And the main thing is to be compassionate, though we'll never really be able to understand. So what do you want me to write? That she was a little girl and she was saved? That's the whole story. My mother doesn't think there's much to look into either, because everyone who was a child there and who was hidden stayed alive at least and had somebody to care for them, which could count for something. My grandma asked, "What did you bring that notebook for? I have nothing to tell you. Just a few words, that's all. Why don't you try someone else?" I said, "Because I don't have anyone else." And then finally she said, "Darkness, a pit, potatoes." And then the war was over. She said she never left the pit, only the rat did. And that's how I found out about the rat. Some poems from a website called Girl and Rat. Ending. I so much want to be dead. How can I get to be dead? It isn't enough to want to be dead. It isn't enough to be dead, because even when I am dead, it won't be over. Up, down. Up there, farmers. Further up, birds. Furthest up, parents. Down here, Jews. Further down, children. Furthest down, children of Jews. lullaby. Once upon a time, there was a little Jewish girl, and she had little Jewish hands and little Jewish eyes and a little Jewish mouth and a little Jewish body and a big hole. Big, little. I have a big pit outside me. I have a little pit within. The big pit is mine. The little pit is the Stefan's. From the diary of Father Stanislaw, a Catholic priest in Poland, September 15th, 1943, Day of Our Lady of Sorrows. Pardon this little girl who has no name, because she is the unwitting source of my despair. Embrace her, grant her salvation. She is huddled in the wings of the church, mute as stone, and I pray in vain for slumber to engulf us both. Only the soft hand of sleep will succeed in dusting off tormented memory, suspending for a brief moment all that which has been best forgotten and prepare the rememberer for the new day. I carried her into my living quarters, but even the jostling did not elicit a sound from her. 5 years old, or 6, emaciated, disheveled, the rags sticking to her flesh. Her face I cannot quite discern. The farmer's wife fought me, refusing to hand the girl child over. Yeah, an asset, a steady income. Her voice dripping like honey, she said, "Oh, Father Stanislaw, she will defile the house of the Lord." Her only son was also with her in church, a huge fellow, big hands, darting eyes. He always kisses my hand submissively. I baptized him on St. Stephen's Day. He always knelt before the large crucifix, a devout expression on his face. Every Sunday he'd take his place at the head of the line leading to the confessional. May God be in your heart, and may you be the only contrite as you confess your sins. He would whisper about small thefts, trifling transgressions. He always confesses some service he missed, and I pardon him and send him on his way. A girl child. He never mentioned her. February 28th, 1945. Maybe history is a kind of story, a kind of a poem, a collection of legends or dreams that people tell themselves at night. And these stories and legends and poems and dreams embody the truth in a code that few will want to decipher. Someday in the future, memory will be packaged like merchandise, turning into nothing more than a thick cloud, and the story of one little girl will be swallowed up within it. And I cannot count on the little girl's memory either, because I did everything within my power to erase it. I destroyed it, knowing full well that this would preserve her body and her soul for the rest of her life, which had been entrusted to me for safekeeping. So this testimony will lie in the darkness until such time as the child is no longer with us, and I too will have gone the way of all flesh. This memory will live on, I promise myself, just as the laughter of the rat will always be there. It is a laughter that evolves in such utter darkness that we cannot even suspect it exists. Even if we ourselves have never laughed it, we always hope that someone else might, no matter what happens, in spite of everything. I bury this testimony and seal it. Someday it will rise from the dead. The Jews did exist. The little girl does exist. Against all forgettings, this memory shall prevail. As Jessica mentioned, I met Nava Semmel many years ago in Israel, and I'm so touched and so glad to have played some part in enabling her to speak out, which led to this wonderful novel about the transmission of Holocaust memory. We know the Holocaust most powerfully by the many firsthand accounts of its victims, accounts such as the Diary of Anne Frank. As has been said, more than 50,000 Holocaust survivors made video recountings of their experiences for the USC Shoah Foundation Archives, a project started by Steven Spielberg in 1994. 1,700 of these interviews are with survivors brave enough to talk about their experiences of sexual violence. The video clip I will now introduce, the account of Manya, is one of them. Recorded in 1995 in Denver, Colorado, when she was 77 years old. There are no doubt thousands more who were shamed into silence and thousands more who were murdered after they were raped. The memory of what happened to these women and men passes with them. Manya's testimony is so important, not only for her, for the memory of what happened to her at Auschwitz and at Birkenau, but also for the memory of all others who were unable to speak out but suffered from sexual abuse. I want to thank Shoah Foundation, Remember the Women Institute, and Equality Now for their effort tonight to break the silence. It is long overdue, and the voices of victims past carry forward into the present, where we have seen sexual violence used systematically as a weapon of war. In the former Yugoslavia, in Rwanda, in the Congo, where armed conflict is occurring as we speak. Manya's voice is a call to women and men everywhere, and it is as relevant today as it was during the Holocaust. The clip you are about to see was put together by USC School of Cinematic Arts graduate student Anissa Douglas. Hopefully, it will help us all in our efforts to ensure that never again is something we can say about rape and sexual violence. Thank you very much.